Hi everyone. We've had a lot of questions on how to do the break-even analysis on what to do with your employees given the payroll protection program. So hopefully this tutorial helps you arrive at what kind of decision that you need to be making over the course of the next couple weeks. So in this example, here are our variables. We've got 30 FTEs, so 30 people working for us. We have a $200,000 average payroll per month, including health insurance when I did the calculation. So for me with PPP, that means that I have $500,000 available because it's $200,000 times 2.5 is the funding that's available. So my covered expenses are going to be this payroll and then also rent, utilities, and interest. Let's assume that those are $25,000 a month. My uncovered expenses are going to be $50,000 a month, meaning this is just other stuff that I have. This could be IT costs, things that are not part of the payroll protection program, but I otherwise have to pay and I have expenses. The cover period under the payroll protection program, there's a lot of there's a whole bunch of dates that are in this, but the covered period in terms of what's going to qualify for loan forgiveness is the 8 weeks after you receive the funds. So, in this case, we're going to have $450,000 of total loan forgiveness available to us because we're spending $200,000 a month in payroll, and we're spending $25,000 a month in other covered costs with the rent, utilities, and interest. So we've got $450,000 of loan forgiveness that's gonna happen, which leaves us with $50K left, right? So remember these numbers. So if we look at your typical break-even analysis of what I'm trying to figure out, is that what I'm trying to cover is right now until the funds become available, because our worst case scenario, when I say worst case scenario, it could always be worse than this, I guess, but I think we need to plan on the fact that funds are going to be available 5/1 if you back into the end of the covered period, which is here, which is your 8 weeks. So what I'm trying to figure out is how I cover effectively the month of April, which is this $275,000 number. So that's what I got to figure out from a cash flow perspective. So if I look at the break-even analysis, assuming that I have, again, the $275,000 that I can cover via line of credit, cash, other, to cover this amount. If I look at the break-even analysis, assuming that my sales are typically $300,000 a month, there's no real way to forecast what your sales are going to be. There's been some information around, how China's GDP slowed down during the coronavirus pandemic over there. So, these 25%, 50% numbers are going to be really specific to you, but in the absence of really knowing, it's as good a guess as any, and it's going to really depend on the nature of your business. What we know is coming in April is $75,000 here because it's 25% of $300,000. So I know my inflows from sales. I know my outflows, which are here, which is going to be $275,000. I've got a negative cash flow of $200,000 in this first month. The PPP will likely be funded all at once, so this is just for illustrative purposes. But when I get to May, now all of a sudden I can count on this inflow coming in to offset my negative numbers. So if I look at how I'm faring from a cash flow perspective, this is what each month ends up looking like, and what I have at risk is this $75,000, which is the sum of all these put together. But remember, I also had $50K left over in loan because my original amount was 500K, but 450K forgiven. So, in terms of deciding whether or not this is something that you want to take on or whether or not you want to take the debt or should I generally lay people off or ask for some other reductions. Yeah, I think the way that I would look at this is that if your sales are going to be delayed but not lost, meaning pretty confident that what you were going to sell, and you're just having a delay in those sales or a delay in those collections. If you think about it, then you're really getting a $450,000 inflow from the government to offset expenses that you were going to have anyway. So your year was going to end up where your year was going to end up, but you just got a $450,000 non-taxable benefit. So really, in terms of whether or not you want to reduce expenses to preserve cash flow prior to that is versus using a line of credit or some other source to cover the $275,000 that you were going to flow out. Yeah, that's really a decision about the risk that you're willing to take on versus your culture and employee morale associated with doing anything dramatic. If, on the other hand, your sales are going to be gone forever, they're not coming back, and you're trying to figure out how to finance the $75,000, then if you're really looking at financing, what happened during this piece when the sales are lost. So really, your options there are reduce wages in the month of April or do layoffs, but you'll want to get people back in this 8-week period because the loan forgiveness is related to what you're actually paying out and employing during this time period. There's a calculation associated with hiring people back that you let go prior to you getting the loan that reduces the amount of forgiveness if you either lay people off during this 8-week period or you have less employees than you had in the test period, which is 2/15/19 through 6/30/19, or if you're a brand new business, it's just January and February of 2020. So, the whole goal here is to stimulate you or incentivizing you to rehire some people. So if that doesn't work, if you don't want to go the route of the reduced wages or layoffs, you can also use the disaster funding mechanism that's available to finance this gap. And remember, you already have 50K of it covered. And then you could also use a traditional loan if you wanted to. So it's really going to be a decision point around, do I want to go ahead and finance or not finance, really based on whether or not I think the sales reduction is temporary or somewhat permanent. Another thing about this 7B disaster loan, that goes through 12/31. So if for some reason this goes beyond 6/30, I'm sure there'll be some other changes that happen to the PPP as well, but the disaster funding is available for 7B beyond the time period, and that's really used for other things. So basically, the 7B disaster loan is not PPP stuff, although you could have originally obtained financing for it. Presumably that your PPP financing would pay for it. So what's that? AP, increased raw materials cost. What it's not is debt restructure. So you can't use it just to swap out debt. So that's the other thing that might be available to you as well from a financing standpoint. So I hope this helps. And as always, if you have any questions, hit us here. And we also have a webinar on Tuesday, which I believe will be let me just check my calendar here. I believe Tuesday is, yeah, 3:31 on this in more detail. So again, hope this helps and gets you through the weekend. Thanks.